I believe free TV is a national treasure. It should be protected.
I think that's a tremendous threat to free speech in general in this country.
I'm desperately concerned that the government is going to silence us, confiscate our stations.
It could literally put us off the air.
Many of those stations show religious or minority programming.
I think it's a terrible precedent for the FCC to do something like this.
Stop the spectrum auction. Vote no against the spectrum auction and protect LPTV broadcasters. Welcome to Crosstalk. I'm Dr. Randy Weiss, and this episode of our program will take us far afield from our normal fare. As most of you know, I am a minister of the gospel, and I use television to convey that message. I cherish the freedom of religious speech, and I join with other believers who use this medium as a member of the National Religious Broadcasters Association. In fact, I serve as a member of the NRB Board of Directors, as well as being a long-standing member of the NRB TV Committee. I care about our freedom of religion. I care about our freedom to broadcast, and I care about the type of society that my grandchildren will entertain. There are forces at work this very week who would silence my voice on stations that I have personally constructed. In fact, my station and thousands of stations are at risk of a government confiscation, and it is progressing through Congress at the speed of light. I guess I need to tell you these things because I've never mentioned it on our program. But in addition to producing Christian television programs, my wife and I have spent many years actually building Christian TV stations. Now, just as many stations around the nation have given voice to our programs, we have endeavored to give voice to the programs of others, and we have worked diligently to bring free Christian TV to many areas of the nation. Now, I don't waste your time talking about these things because I'm not interested in trying to impress you with my bold ideas about how I hope to reach our culture. This program is generally aimed not at reaching the culture, but at reaching you. But at this moment, I need your help. It's a critical time, and our Congress will literally silence over 4,000 smaller television stations to satisfy the wireless industry. Countless Christian stations will be confiscated because we don't have the political power to stand against giant wireless monopolies. I apologize for not informing you about my own efforts as a Christian television broadcaster. I'm sorry that I've not brought our own audiences along on this incredible journey into TV station construction. Well, first, I want you to know, and you can be positive, we have not used one single penny of ministry funding to launch into this work. We didn't feel that it was what the work of the ministry should do. The ministry preaches the gospel, and we use these programs that are produced to help that message go forward. And stations around the country carry our program. Not a penny of ministry funding was used to build our stations. Second, we have committed ourselves to humbly pursue the will of God in these matters, and we just never felt like He wanted us to brag about what we were doing. Some people would be impressed with themselves about building television stations. I'm not, and I don't think you should be either. But third, I feel terrible that it is the proposed destruction of Christian TV stations that is finally causing me to introduce you to this important aspect of my life's work. I can't change the past, and it is the current crisis that is about to hit our nation that I think we need to address. And should we fail to convince Congress to change its course, there's a catastrophe waiting. Now, I want to tell you something. I promise to, in the future, tell you the story about how my family and I built New Christian TV station right across the street, actually, from our ministry office here in Dallas, Texas. I want to tell you because I think it will encourage you and build your faith. And I promise to tell you about how God led us to launch an entirely new Christian TV network in major markets and small towns around America. because we did it by faith. And if it'll help build your faith, I want you to know about it. And I promise to explain some of the incredible stories of how God built our faith through these giant steps into the unknown. But these are stories for another time. For the moment, none of that matters if the government is going to successfully shut us down, and thousands just like us. I know I've never mentioned it on TV, but lately I've spent a lot of time in Washington. Someone needed to talk to our congressional leaders and the industry masters who all but seem bent on our annihilation. On behalf of the Coalition for Free TV and Broadband, recently I went to the National Press Club in the belly of the beast in D.C. I participated in a press conference to inform our nation of the tragedy that is about to take place. I'm certain that our future is absolutely in God's hands, but our government is determined to pick the winners and losers. This time around, I hope you will pick up the phone and let Congress know that at the end of the day, if they keep picking winners and making losers, the people will soon pick a new government. Politicians serve at your discretion, not that of the giant corporations or the lobbyists who pay for their campaigns. We are officially down to a we the people moment. I hope I'll be able to count on your help to stop the travesty that's just around the corner. Take a brief look at a piece from the press conference.
Also joining me on stage right now is our faith-based director for the Coalition. He is the host of Crosstalk International and a board member of the National Religious Broadcasters, Dr. Randy Weiss.
Thank you. I am really delighted to be able to announce that the entire TV committee of the National Religious Broadcasters Association wholeheartedly and unanimously supports this plan. And I also want you to know that we wholeheartedly oppose the confiscation or shutdown of any TV station in this country. Did you hear about the guy the other day that got the enormous cell phone bill? You know your cell phone bill is too high when the wireless companies have enough money that they can convince the Republicans to confiscate small businesses, shut down church television stations, and they can convince the Democrats to fry Kermit's frog legs in rural America. Something's wrong. Did you know that, do you know what LPTV and translator stations are? I'm a Christian LPTV broadcaster. Did you know that over 2,000 stations will be shuttered if the spectrum auction goes through the way it's proposed? Did you know that Detroit may go dark from free television? If these things happen, it's going to make Occupy Wall Street look like Sesame Street. There are unintended consequences for rushing to judgment to fix manufactured crises. Please don't allow 2,000 stations, maybe 4,000 stations, to be destroyed. Congress should not be permitted to raid this industry to enrich wireless giants. I visited many congressional offices just seeking a little protection. I was shocked that many assumed protection was in their bills, but they were unaware that there is no protection for LPTV or translator stations. One of them said, confiscation, don't use that word. I said, what would you call it? He thought of it more as a sacrifice for the greater good. Well, Should Congress rob community broadcasters on Main Street to bail out the communication giants on Wall Street? I don't think so. I hope that as a result of this press conference, there will be some people asking the right questions to the right people in the right places so that there will be protection for all broadcasters, not just giant broadcasters. Does anyone care about the little guy anymore? Is it right to strip small businesses of their future through redistribution of our legally licensed TV spectrums? If Congress fails to include protection for every LPTV and translator station, it could result in the largest government confiscation of our lifetime. Now, I'm a Christian broadcaster because Jesus changed my life. I want to bring hope and encouragement to troubled families and communities that are struggling. I still believe in one nation under God, and I still believe America needs the hope and encouragement that His message delivers. But beyond that, I'm the canary in the coal mine. If Congress is allowed to silence my voice to pay their bills, what makes you think you will continue to have your voices? Thank you.
Well, I guess some of you might not have anticipated that sort of a set of comments from me, and some of it may have even seemed a little bit confusing to those of you not familiar with the situation. Right after a short break, we're going to cut to an interview with a TV broadcaster where these specific items were discussed, and I had an opportunity to elaborate on the matter so that you can have a better understanding of what's happening and what you need to do to help us. Please stay tuned.
What if there was no more local news, sports, severe weather warnings, catastrophe coverage, school closing announcements, Amber Alerts, favorite TV shows? Congress is planning to auction local TV airwaves in order to balance the budget, which could mean no more local TV. Take action now. Call Congress today and tell them to leave local TV alone.
Wow, that was something else. The National Press Club in Washington, D.C., a great venue for you to present your ideas about what's going on with free over-the-air television in this nation. But I have to say, you looked a little nervous.
Well, that's because I was a lot nervous, Rod. I'd tell you the truth, I was terrified. It's a terrible feeling to get up in front of a whole room full of secular journalists, people who develop trade publications and make national news, and stand up in front of them and challenge them with things they're not aware of.
Well, I have to ask you, Randy, what are you talking about in regards to free over-the-air television, specifically the support that seemingly is coming from this plan or for this plan in Congress involving Republicans who in the past have traditionally stood up against, taking over and destroying small business, but they've stood up for small business and entrepreneurship. What's going on?
It's upside down, Rod. The world is upside down. One of the comments I made at the press conference is that your cell phone bill is too big when the wireless companies have so much money that they can convince Congress to come in and confiscate small businesses, shut down entrepreneurs, essentially take over church television stations for nothing. It's backwards. And then conversely, you've got the Democrats who are being lobbied by these wireless monopolies to move in on public broadcasting, public television. It's incredible.
You mentioned, and I have to ask you if this was a tongue-in-cheek comment, but why is Kermit the Frog at any kind of risk or danger in rural America?
Well, I met with leaders from the Association for Public Television, and they run major national full-power stations, but they run lots of LPTV and translator stations also. When a major broadcaster in Denver, say, use Denver as an example, or Salt Lake City. I know a broadcaster in Salt Lake City, he puts his signal out one time, and he reaches 200 different communities through 200 translator stations. They retransmit his signal. Well, if the government goes through with this spectrum auction, the full power broadcaster in, say, Salt Lake City, he'll be compensated, he'll be enriched. But the 200 translators may all be shut down, and those 200 communities will lose Kermit the Frog.
Well, now, Randy, do you think the vast majority of the members of Congress understand the role that low-power television plays in this nation?
Absolutely not. I visited numerous congressional offices. I talked to congressmen, I talked to senior aides, I talked to policy advisors, and they do not understand it. Because I asked them, what is the congressman's position on the spectrum auction? And to a person, they were, well, you know, he supports the spectrum auction with protection for broadcasters. And then I would ask him, but there is no protection for LPTV or translator stations. And they would normally say, well, I didn't realize that.
Now, at that point, I have to ask then, how many stations are really at risk at the current way, or with the current way that Congress is considering?
I was in the office of the National Association of Broadcasters recently.
Now, the National Association of Broadcasters represents virtually all of the full-power television stations in the nation.
Yes, you'd think as a National Association of Broadcasters they would represent all broadcasters.
That's not the case.
Well, I don't feel that it is, because they're, for the most part, it's the full-power broadcasters that have a voice. And if Congress goes through with the plan that has been presented and the spectrum auction takes place, full-power broadcasters will be enriched. Low-power TV and translator stations will be confiscated. Now, you asked how many? I didn't realize it till I was in their office. Over 4,000 television stations are going to be whacked.
Oh, that's amazing. And are you telling me that none of these mom and pop, for the vast majority of them, stations that were started in communities to help and to minister and to aid those communities, you're telling me that none of these folks will be compensated? Or how would their owners have any compensation under the current plan?
Welfare. There is no compensation in the structure of the government the way they've got it set right now. If the spectrum auction goes through, it will be a confiscation. And one of the congressional offices I was in, I asked my standard question, what is the position on the congressman relevant to the spectrum auction? He says, well, we're in favor of it with protection for broadcasters. And then I would explain, but there is no protection. Like, have you read the bill? There is no protection for LPTV or translator stations. I said, is the congressman really willing to essentially march into our churches and raid our facilities and confiscate our stations? You know what they said? They said, don't use that word.
What else could you call it?
That's exactly what I asked him. What else could you call it? If they take your station and give you nothing, it's not even an eminent domain case where at least they pay you the fair market value for what they have taken. It is a federal government confiscation. And I'm just really concerned, Rod, that if the American people don't wake up to this like today, not next month, today, it's going to go through. The government is like, they're desperate for money. And that's what's so sad. Right now, the way the plan is structured, the Congressional Budget Office has said it'll net, the auction is believed to net $6 billion to federal deficit reduction. $6 billion. It's not going to run the government for a few days, but it'll destroy the greatest broadcast infrastructure on the planet. Nothing like this has ever existed. The kind of free exchange of information we have through broadcast television. $6 billion is what would go towards federal deficit reduction. 4,000 stations would be destroyed and confiscated. The free exchange of information would just be coming to a screeching halt in many ways, particularly for Christian broadcasters. And what makes it even so much worse, if they left broadcasters alone, the plan that broadcasters has presented, and the government knows it, the Republicans know it, the Democrats know it, it would yield over $200 billion to the government deficit. It would reduce the deficit by over $200 billion. No station would be destroyed. No confiscation would be necessary. No American would lose service of free over-the-air TV. And the cost of internet broadband would would go down. There'd be more money in the pockets of the American people. There'd be no intrusion of government. And the government would have over $200 billion more to reduce the debt.
That's remarkable that they don't want to consider that plan because of the lobbying efforts being done on behalf of a few who control so much of our nation's communication. Now, you mentioned Detroit, and it could go dark. How could Detroit go dark?
It was reported in the Washington Times, I believe, that Detroit would lose its free TV service. Why? Because in this repacking of the spectrum that would take place, the government would basically wipe out about 40% of the existing TV channels so that the wireless companies could get it. And in that repacking, the stations that would remain have to move to other channels, but because of interference issues and because of its proximity to the Canadian border, all station placement has to be coordinated with a foreign government on the southern border in Mexico, on the northern border in Canada. There will not be enough spectrum left to leave room for any of the existing stations in Detroit.
What makes you ostensibly the canary in the coal mine?
Well, I'll tell you. As part of the low-power broadcast industry, LPTV, I have come to learn that our industry is where most of the Christian broadcasters live. Most of the local community broadcasters are in LPTV and translator operations. We are considered worthless. Our lives, the life's work that thousands and thousands and thousands of broadcasters and program producers and distributors have put into their operations is now considered worthless. And the messages that we distribute are considered not only worthless, but I think to some dangerous. If our freedom to present the messages that we hold dear, and as Christian broadcasters, that is the message of the everlasting gospel of Jesus Christ. If our messages can be silenced, our voices can be made to go away, anyone's voice can be silenced.
Freedom of speech that this nation was founded upon is basically at risk here.
It is absolutely at risk. We all remember Tiananmen Square. Had it not been for somebody getting out a message, a picture, an image, I'm convinced those Chinese tanks would have rolled over everyone and they wouldn't have stopped until no voice of dissension existed. But because of communication, there was protection. When Mubarak in Egypt wanted to stop the Arab Spring, first thing he wanted to do was hit that button on the kill switch for the internet and shut down broadcasters. And he was able to in his country, but he did it too late. We still have freedom in this country. There are probably 8,000 LPTV and translator stations and probably close to 10,000 transmitters in the country between full power, low power, Class A, the different classifications of television broadcasters. Probably close to 10,000 transmitters. At every LPTV and Class A and full power station, they have what's called an EAS system, an emergency alert system. If the Russians are coming, somebody needs to tell the community, the Russians are coming, the Russians are coming. Shut down our stations. And who's going to be able to say the Americans are coming should, God forbid, that day ever come?
How can people then get the word back to Congress, to Washington, that says, do not allow the confiscation of the American airwaves to be taken, and then no compensation given to the low-power mom and pop broadcasters out there, and all of this given to a few wireless monopolies? How can they let their congressmen know that this needs to stop and this cannot go forward?
There's a free coalition called the Coalition for Free TV and Broadband. The information is there. Membership is free. You'll be updated on news, on articles, on the status of our situation. There's also another website called Save Local TV. The first place is to become informed, and then immediately pick up your telephone, call Congress. And the message is very simple. Vote no. Stop the spectrum auction and protect LPTV broadcasters. If broadcasters are protected, all broadcasters, not just the giant broadcasters, all broadcasters, if broadcasters are protected, the auction will fail, because there are too many of us out there who aren't interested in selling. They're not interested in giving their spectrum up regardless of the price. We want our voices to be heard because we have a message that we hold dear. We have invested our lives in presenting this message of hope and encouragement that, hey, Jesus changed my life and He's still changing lives. Don't shut me up through an auction and take everything away so that a monopoly will be able to decide what's fit for the American people to consume in media.
And they won't be friendly. Americans need to realize that what's happening, what's being considered in Congress right now, is a very real and very dangerous threat to our way of life and our means of communication in this country. And they need to get on the phone right now and call their congressman, and you say, and you give them your name, I live in this part of your district. I want you to not support the auction. I do not want you to take the airwaves away from broadcast television in this nation, and I want you to protect specifically low-power television. They will listen, but people must pick up their phones and they must do this. This is not something you can put off. This must be put at the top of your to-do list. Before you make shopping plans, before you get the oil change in the car, this is something that must be at the top of their to-do list.
I know some of these things are confusing and seem strange, and some viewers probably are thinking, man, these guys are the ones who wear the aluminum foil on their hats or something. But this is real. It's now. And I would encourage you, if you're watching this program, please go to the website, Save Local TV. Save Local TV. And join the Coalition for Free TV and Broadband. freetvandbroadband.org. There's plenty of information. This is real. It's not manufactured. And we need your help. For God's sake, the sake of the gospel, for the sake of free communication in our nation. If you're still a person who believes in God we trust, if you're still a person that believes that God has a voice and a desire to bring hope and encouragement to your family or your neighbors' families or your community, please call Congress today. Tomorrow may be too late.
Because He loves me, I will follow Him. Because He loves me, I will follow Him. Because He loves me, because He loves me, because He loves me, I will follow Him. Because He loves me, I will follow Him.